and amigos, Pendragon here with the third and final video in the three-part series where we go over the question, is Ashes of Creation the new Everquest Next? In the last two videos, we went over the rise and the fall of Everquest Next, and I wanted to show everybody the history of Everquest Next so that way you can better understand my opinion and form opinions of your own. And so before we dive in, it's important to keep in mind that it is extremely common for developers to pull inspiration from other games, so it's natural that there's going to be some similarities. The format of this video is going to be a little bit different than the other ones. Instead of giving just a bunch of facts, I'm going to be giving a lot of my opinion and a lot of my insight. And so you'll catch me rambling on a little bit, but it's okay, so let's just dive into it and get started. We'll begin by going back to the Ashes of Creation Kickstarter, and I picked this era because in the development cycle, it's about the same area where Everquest Next was when it ultimately shut down. So as we go through the Kickstarter video, we immediately notice that Ashes of Creation has a decent amount of in-game content that they can show us. Everquest Next, it didn't have so much. Everquest Next, they relied on the pedigree of their IP and their previous player base to really get this going. With Ashes of Creation, they didn't have a player base. They had to focus on building one. And so Steven and his team spent a lot of time developing what it would actually look like in-game before the Kickstarter, so that way they have something to show us. Similar to Everquest Next, Ashes of Creation was built on 4 goals. Now these goals are slightly different, however a lot of what Ashes of Creation wants to achieve, Everquest Next wanted to achieve as well. And so the first goal or pillar in Ashes of Creation is their node system. Simply put, the node system was designed around how the world interacted with players. You have these nodes, and they are essentially regions of control. And as players play through these nodes, the node system keeps track of what everybody's doing. If you go and gather, kill mobs, complete quests, you get XP that'll help level the node. Once the node gets to a certain point, or a certain thing happens, then that will trigger another event. In the example of the Kickstarter video, players are going and leveling a node, and they dig a little bit too deep, and they awaken a dragon. Now, if you watch the previous 2 videos, this sounds very familiar with the 4th grail that the Everquest Next team described. In Everquest Next, they called them rallying calls, and a rallying call would be placed in a certain area. Everybody from the area would then come and complete quests or kill monsters or do things to gain XP to help level the actual tent city. And then once it gets to a certain point, that triggers other procedurally generated events. The goal is very similar, but how they achieve that goal is slightly different. The second pillar that Steven described was meaningful conflict. Meaningful conflict was designed around how you can catalyze change in the environment around you. This pillar is similar to the 3rd grail described by the Everquest Next team. And their 3rd grail was a life of consequence using emergent AI. So as you play a game, you have to make decisions. Each decision has a consequence. So in the Orcs on the Road example, a player had a few choices. They could gather a group and go fight the orcs. They could go around and not use the road, which means the orcs won't be getting much money and they'll leave. Or they can inform a guard, and the guards will then patrol the roads, and eventually the orcs would leave. Now, Everquest Next relied heavily on emergent AI, and this is going to be very important a little bit later. In Ashes of Creation, Steven wanted you to feel like you had a vested interest in the game itself and what happens. So everything you do, all of your decisions have purpose behind them. And so whether it is attacking a monster, building a node, or defending your city against invaders, or going and fighting a dungeon, or going and protecting a caravan to trade goods, or attacking that caravan, and all of your decisions have a meaningful impact in shaping the world. I'd like to pause real quick and go back to the Orcs on the Road example. And so in this example, the Everquest Next team was relying heavily on emergent AI. And as I was doing research, there were conflicting stories. The team working for SOE, their AI team, said that everything was perfectly fine. But we learned that the Storybricks team, which was the driving force behind the emergent AI, they ran into several technological issues. And so Steven decided to go a different route. And it reminds me of Ultima Online, where the players drove the narrative of the story. The players were the ones who affected change, rather than relying on a system to drive the change itself. I'm a firm believer that the major issue that was holding back Storybricks from completing the emergent AI system was the fact that it would take a considerable amount of CPU resources and processing power to drive this system. Now, we all know about the AI revolution that we're in the middle of. However, back in 2015, Pascal hadn't launched yet, and Pascal was the graphics card that really pushed it really kicked off the emergent AI revolution. So Steven, if you're listening, I'm hoping that you'll take a look at emergent AI and how it can be incorporated into Ashes of Creation. And Everquest Next, it was going to be the driving force behind everything. However, you don't need to redo any of your core systems. Today's AI can be used on NPCs or bosses or mobs to allow them to interact with us more intelligently. It would be really cool if we go into a dungeon and a boss is scaled based off the player's skill. So if we're just starting the dungeon, it will scale down a little bit while still being difficult and provide us a good challenge rather than just wiping the floor with us. And if a more experienced team comes in, or if the system notices that this group of players comes in often and the boss recognizes them, he can kind of hold a grudge and scale up and be more difficult where there's more mechanics, or he knows that something's coming at a certain period of time, like a combo of sorts where he'll do an interrupt or something along those lines. Or it would be interesting if NPCs were running around and you had to go find them and they weren't in the same 4 spots every single time, where you would actually have to go out and search different towns, or have a group of people go out and try to search for this guy and find them and all complete the task together. So, coming back on point, the third pillar is the economy, and the economy was designed around incentivizing the player to interact with the world. One of the ways this is accomplished is by removing the global auction house and having regional markets. And in these markets, players will have to transport goods between the markets in order to make money, or in order to bring goods to the guild for them to craft better weapons, etc. And while these items are being transported in the caravans, these caravans can be attacked. So the players have to defend the caravans while they're being transported. And so this brings a deeper level of trading and economics to the game itself that most players aren't accustomed to. The last pillar is the narrative, and this was designed to hold all the other systems together and keeping players interested in the different outcomes. For those of you who didn't get a chance to watch the first video, these last 2 pillars were something different that Ashes of Creation really wanted to pay attention to, that the Everquest Next team didn't really address. For Everquest Next, we have 2 grails left. The first grail is changing the core game. And so the Everquest Next team wanted to change the way that we experienced MMORPGs. And one of the ways that they planned on accomplishing this is by developing a primary and a secondary class system. As a player, you would pick up one of 8 primary classes, and then as you progress through the game, you can collect up to 40 other classes to be used as subclasses. The Ashes of Creation team is also deploying a dual class system, where as a player, you pick one of 8 classes, and then you can pick any of the 8 classes as your subclass. The second grail is destructibility. And in short, the Everquest Next team wanted to allow us to destroy anything, anywhere, anytime. In Ashes of Creation, they deployed a system that allows us to destroy buildings or walls and potentially other items. Now, this is interesting because this is the first feature that I noticed that was developed and rolled out after the beginning of the alpha phases. This is a great example of both companies trying to achieve the same goal but in different ways. In Everquest Next, they built the entire world out of little squares that they called voxels, and the voxels were destructible. In Ashes of Creation, they used a different system to allow us to destroy buildings or parts of buildings. This brings me to what sparked this question most recently. Is Ashes of Creation the new Everquest Next? With the announcement that Alpha 1 Phase 1 is being repurposed for its own standalone system called Apocalypse, this reminded me of what Everquest Next did with Landmark. In short, Landmark was designed to allow players to help test mechanics and features in the game while they're currently being developed, as well as build things that would potentially make it into the Everquest Next game. Like Landmark, Apocalypse is a way for the players to help test mechanics and features while these mechanics and features are actively being worked on. And so a major difference for me between Everquest Next and Ashes of Creation was the goals of the development team. In Everquest Next, they wanted to change the way we experience MMORPGs. In Ashes of Creation, the team wants to change the way we experience MMORPGs, but do it in a way that is using the current technology. Again, Steven, AI, it's awesome. In the cancellation letter for Everquest Next, the CEO said that the game was canceled because the game just wasn't fun, and I completely believe this. When you have to build your own engine, when you have to build a new world, when you're building brand new features using technology that quite wasn't ready yet, that is a recipe for disaster, and that's exactly what happened. With Ashes of Creation, they're using the Unreal Engine, which has been thoroughly tested. They're implementing mechanics that aren't relying on technology and have been proven to work in other games. While I say that they're shooting for the stars, in some areas I believe they are, but if they miss those stars, it's not going to cause the fall of the game. I believe that the core mechanics of the game, the pillars of the game, are perfectly reasonable for what's available today. Another big difference is the transparency. In Everquest Next, the term smoke and mirrors was used a lot because people felt like we were being shown one thing and it really wasn't representative of what was actually in the game. And we really didn't see a whole lot of what was in the game. We saw what was pushed out to Landmark and what was pushed out for testing, but that's about it. With Ashes of Creation, Steven and his team have been extremely transparent, where we got to see what was available in the game at the time of Kickstarter, what was available during the alphas, or during Alpha 0, and during Alpha 1 Phase 1, and everything in between. I think that has gone a long way to show the players that this is a game that is actually being worked on, and tremendous progress is being made with the game itself. I feel that if Everquest Next did something similar, if they had something to show, people would have been a little more patient. Would it have stopped Everquest Next from being canceled? Probably not, but it would have gone a long way to set our expectations for the game and what it would potentially be capable of. With all of that said, it is my opinion that Ashes of Creation is a continuation of the hopes and dreams that we had for Everquest Next. There are a lot of similarities between the two games. However, the goals that Ashes of Creation is trying to achieve, while the same as Everquest Next, are fundamentally different. Ashes of Creation is going about achieving those goals in a different way. Not only is Ashes of Creation trying to achieve similar goals, they expanded on it a lot further, especially with the economy and the focus on exactly how meaningful conflict will affect the players and affect the world that we're going to be playing in. And ultimately, I don't believe Ashes of Creation is going to be the new Everquest Next. Everquest Next is stained with a colossal failure. I believe Ashes of Creation is going to be successful because they started working on a game and they've been completely transparent. They're using an engine that's been tested thoroughly. They're using technologies that are readily available today. And they built a really strong team to focus on achieving these goals. Now, rumor on the internet is that Everquest Next really didn't have a strong heading. They didn't have, they had a purpose, but they didn't have a road on how to achieve that purpose. In Ashes of Creation, Steven already had everything planned out. They don't have to work around a whole bunch of red tape. They don't have to sit around a table and talk for months on end on how something is going to be developed and how they're going to achieve some of these goals. Everything has been laid out before them, and they get to focus on going down that path and achieving these goals. And because these goals are reasonable, and because they know how to achieve these goals, I think that the goals are ultimately going to be achieved. What do you guys think? Is Ashes of Creation the new Everquest Next? Is there anything that I missed? Is there anything that you'd like me to elaborate on? If you do, comment below. You can also contact us by going to our website, nerdhousetv.com. As we wrap up this video, I'd like to extend our deepest appreciation for everyone supporting our channel and watching our content. As a thank you, we'll be doing a series of giveaways ranging from gift cards to pre-order packs. In the near future, we will also be giving away an extremely rare Kickstarter code. You can apply this code directly to your account. So, if you already purchased items from Ashes of Creation, you'll be able to apply the code and get the Kickstarter code items as well. Soon, TM, we'll be releasing a video explaining our giveaways and how to enter. Please be sure to subscribe and hit that notification button to be the first to enter our giveaways. Well, that's it for this video. Catch you later, nerds.